It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's Expresso on S3, and if you've got some young ears around, we do want to encourage some parental guidance for our next topic. Now, after braving our way through the bleak winter months, the allure of a spring fling is what many are after. Now, a fling, of course, being a temporary situationship where casual sex is the main objective. The very notion of the fresh cycle of the season sparks our attention and desires, and it is also a shedding of the skin time of year where we add a little touch of something new to our well-being. Now, if you'd prefer a spring fling over a steady relationship, stay tuned.
Oh yeah, because this one will definitely be for you. We've got a panel in studio that's going to be chatting through this conversation with us. It's a panel consisting of clinical psychologists. We've got Slindile Mbata as well as sex counselor Mark Emmerich, and we encourage all of you at home to share in your thoughts or get your thoughts in on our WhatsApp line. That's 063-408-8863. Have you been in a fling, a spring fling at that? And how has that worked out for you? We'd like to hear from you.
We do. Slee, we're going to start off with you. When it comes to the fundamentals of what makes a fling different from a relationship, can you just lay down the ground? Are there even any ground rules?
Yeah, well, if you think about what a typical relationship is, a traditional relationship, you know, there are certain aspects like commitment, you know, that is expected. There's some level of attachment emotionally to the other person. And so a fling is more of having aspects of a relationship without the commitment. So it's more of like, it's just a situation. Something is going on. We might not be sure what that something is. We might actually have rules around what it is too. But there are aspects, like I said, of a relationship. So you might have some sexual engagement, for example. Sometimes it is a purely sexual relationship for some people. But yeah, it's having certain aspects of a relationship that you share with another person.
So you're vibing, is that what it means? You're kind of like just vibing. Mark, what is it about this time of year that makes people more likely, more inclined to, I suppose, want to explore a fling or a casual relationship or vibe, as it were?
Well, I don't think it's specifically this time of the year, although spring is in the air, so that might make a difference psychologically to people.
It's not that I'm wearing shorts that people might... Okay.
Not at all. No.
Okay.
So I do think flings and casual sex is going on all the time. It might be more prominent in spring because in winter, if people are like me, they just curl up into a ball and want to sleep all the time. But I like what Slee said about a fling or casual sex is you're getting in a very short, concentrated space what you would get in a relationship, but it's almost a fantasy in a way, providing both parties know exactly what they're signing up for.
And I think that's important to both be on the same page. Now, Slee, not everyone can do the whole no strings attached or situationship or vibe, whatever you want to label it. What type of person does it take to be able to do that?
Yeah, so I do think that, you know, there's probably a person with a certain level of flexibility. I think you really have to be quite open, because if you're looking for something that's more commitment based, you might become very, very anxious that, you know, you're with someone who's not necessarily made a commitment to you. So I think you have to be able to tolerate a certain level of uncertainty. And yeah, I think being quite open. So if you're looking for something a little bit more serious, it's probably not for you. And if you're a very anxious person and you know that you want something that's a little bit more substantial from a relationship, I would say probably stay away from this one.
It sounds like it functions around parameters. There's so many parameters. Mark, in your experience, do women struggle more with living and existing along those parameters than men? I mean, because this is certainly a perception that does come through in society.
You're asking for an opinion on that based on anecdotal evidence. The anecdotal evidence suggests that young women are probably navigating this area a bit more easier than men. But I mean, Slee raised the word attachment, and your attachment style in these situations is so important. If you have an anxious attachment style, and we don't have enough time to go into the whole attachment theory, if you have an anxious or an avoidant attachment style, you're going to really struggle with casual relationships, because it does require, to navigate it successfully, it requires a very high degree of openness and honesty and emotional maturity. And I do think that the young people of today, when I say young, I'm talking about people probably under 30, are engaging in a very different world to around casual sex, around dating, around relationships than what we had 20, 30 years ago, even 10 years ago maybe.
Well, a very interesting conversation today. We would love for you to be part of it. Our panel, Mark and Slee, they're not going anywhere, as we will be unpacking this a little bit more with you. So do comment, send us your voice notes if you want to be part of this conversation. Our number is 063 408 8863.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. You're just in time as we continue our panel discussion. Of course, winter season coming to an end, and we are here to discuss our spring flings and situationships. Now, can a friend with benefits work for you? Well, our panel consists of clinical psychologist Lindile Mbata, as well as sex counselor Mark Emmerich. And they are here, and we encourage you to please be part of this conversation, share your thoughts and your experiences with us, and you can simply send us a voice note.
Oh, and you have sent in those voice notes. We've got our very first one for the morning. Let's hear what they've got to say.
Good morning to my awesome Expresso team. Pray you all had a blessed weekend. Mrs. Nirmala Devi Mudliya from Kumas. I would be against it. Reasons being, there's no sense of responsibility, no sense of commitment, and mostly no sense of belonging. Do the right thing for yourself.
Okay.
Stay blessed. Have a good day.
Thank you. It really is about doing the right thing for yourself, right? I've got our next one. Let's hear what they've got to say.
Hi, it's Ernest here from Camps Bay. Last spring I thought we were going to be a one-night stand, and we are now still together, and we're madly in love. So, it's quite surprising to me, but it's working like a bomb.
We love a happy ending to this sort of story, don't we?
I almost feel like, you know, a spring fling, let's talk about friends with benefits. And Mark, maybe you'd be the best person to highlight the benefits of the friends with benefits situation.
I think the two callers clearly highlight the opposite poles of the thought of the process around this. And I think everybody's got an opinion on it. And I just emphasize again, if you're going to engage in friends with benefits, you need to be open, honest, there needs to be no deception, you need to have a fairly high level of maturity. And I think as in my opinion, as a phase of going through it, it can well work. And I know many people that it has worked for, but I often think in a long-term sense, the fantasy doesn't match the reality. That as people get older, many people might want more of a commitment, more of a relationship, more structure, more stability. So I'm not convinced that as a long-term solution, it's the way to go.
Okay.
Okay, so conversely, Slindile, what are the downsides then of a spring fling or a casual relationship, as it were?
Yeah. Well, look, while there might be some excitement, maybe initially, as Mark highlighted, it might become, I think, a little bit more problematic because you might actually be foregoing some very important aspects of a more committed relationship. So, as we know, one of the real benefits of having a committed relationship is that you can have companionship, for example, you can have emotional support. So when you forego those things, it might become a little bit difficult in times when, you know, perhaps you might need it or prefer to have it, actually. So having that really from a partner who's just a friend with benefits might be asking a little bit too much. And I think also one of the difficulties with this that people might not anticipate is that it might affect relationships that come afterwards. You know, because maybe you have a certain arrangement here, but you might have an experience that's not particularly pleasant. And we know we are shaped by our experiences. So that experience might actually somehow influence the relationships that do come after.
Wow.
A lot of things to think about, especially if you're going to go into a friends with benefits situation. Now, our second voice note that we got, he said he thought it was going to be a one-night stand and they ended up actually still being together, and it was a bit of a surprise. Now, Mark, if you are someone seeking a long-term relationship and you find yourself in a fling situation, is it best to voice that and see if you can make your fling into a long-term relationship, or is it best to step away from your fling and focus on finding someone you can have that relationship with?
I don't think there's an easy answer to that question. I'd like to pick up on something that Slee said, that often, and I've had many cases where people are engaging in casual sex or friends with benefits, and then they enter into a situation where they now want to engage in a long-term relationship with the person they are with, but their previous lifestyle follows them into the new lifestyle. And often there's an overlap. And sometimes they're not able to give up the previous lifestyle and they hold on to that fantasy. But I think if you want to translate a fling into a long-term relationship, it's about being open and honest and saying, well, let's take this to the next level. And once again, I emphasize the emotional maturity that this requires. It's not for everyone, and people can get hurt in this situation.
And that's why there are rules to how you govern those relationships, right? Because if you then decide you don't want to be in a fling anymore and you start a new relationship that's more committed, is there a cooling off period? Do you serve 30 days notice? Do you just up and leave? What is the story? And that's what we're going to be unpacking a little bit later on with Mark and Slee as they sit here, our panel, as we really unpack all of the rules that govern those open, well, not open relationships, but I suppose open-ended casual relationships. So please do WhatsApp us.
That's right. That number is 063 408 8863. We can't wait to hear from you.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Didn't think your mic is on.
Yes, it is your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso. We're live at the start of a brand new week, and it's a brand new season 2, springtime. I'm telling you, we're discussing all of that, those spring flings and those situationships, those vibing engagements and encounters that you might find yourself engaging in. What are they? How do they look? How can they work out for you? And when will they not work out for you? We've got our panel consisting of clinical psychologist Slindile Mbata, as well as sex counselor Mark Emmerich. And we've encouraged you to join in on the discussion, sharing your thoughts as you have on 063 408 8863.
That's right. We actually have a few voice notes that came through. Let's take a listen to the first one.
Really think having a holiday fling is a bad thing, because like it's a holiday and like, you know, you need some company sometimes, you know. So I don't really think it's like a bad thing or something.
Okay, well, let's take a listen to the other voice note that came through.
Good morning. I feel okay with it because it will give me a mindset of our relationship is. It's just for the first time, because it will be an experience for me to see if a person is really this person, if he's the real one. It will be my lifelong partner. So casual dating is actually for me fun. It's actually for me a great idea, because that's how you're gonna see if this is your real partner. Thank you.
The trial.
Trial and error.
Subscribe before the trial ends.
Subscribe here. Well, I suppose you're not going to know whether you can do strings, no strings attached, or a situationship by putting yourself into some sort of a situationship. Now, Slee, what do you do if you find yourself in a scenario like this where you've got a friend, and in order to now cross that boundary, an element of trust is involved, but how do you know you can cross that line with this friend without ruining the friendship?
Oh, yeah, it's really...
I mean, we're trying to have our bread button on both sides.
Yeah, Zoe, I think it actually can be very tricky with a friend, you know, because already there's a sort of established relationship, so it might be a little bit more difficult to do perhaps than with a stranger. But I think the best thing to do, as Mark mentioned before, is just to openly talk. You have to be honest about this. You know, I think if you fall into that situation and you find yourself in the situationship, it might be very, very difficult. So I think establishing what the parameters are, you know, does this mean that we then also hang out in social situations? Are we doing this almost almost as partners? Are we still staying friends? Are we going to communicate? How many times a week are we doing this? You know, so there really are a lot of questions, a lot of things I think that need to be worked through. But it's probably a good idea to talk about and actually say, okay, what is going on between the two of us?
And I think when you find yourself in a situationship, there really shouldn't be anything to be embarrassed about. You need to lay down the laws, not only for what the situationship is, but for yourself. Like I think as an individual, you need to also say, okay, this is how far I'm willing to go.
Also looking at how you manage it, right? Because Mark, let's say I'm in a casual relationship or situationship, as Zoe calls it, and I'm actually actively pursuing a more committed relationship. Do I then let my casual partner know? Do I need to let them know am I obligated to do so?
I'd like to answer it coming from a different angle. Just before we ended the last segment, you introduced the phrase open relationships. And I mean, technically we're talking about what we call open ethical relationships. Yeah. And the key word in open ethical relationships is discussion and consensual relationships. I have many clients that identify as what they call ethical sluts. They're in open relationships. They might even be in a relationship, in a committed relationship, and outside the relationship they're having casual sex, which is a whole new terrain. Remember, we are moving into the age of depathologizing around sexual behaviors and sexual preferences. So that's short, that's an abbreviation for basically anything goes. Having said that, consensual sex is the key, and safe sex and open, honest communication. Because when you enter into open ethical relationships or into ethical slut situations, you need to have very clear guidelines.
And honesty is still a guiding principle across the board.
I know we have to wrap this topic. Slee, just quickly, if you find yourself in a situationship and all of a sudden you're getting jealous or you feel a little bit possessive over this person, what is the best step, or how do you manage those emotions?
Yeah, so I think for one, definitely don't feed into it as far as possible. Don't stalk the person on social media, try and find out what they're doing on the weekends, why they're not with you, that kind of thing.
Benchmark the person they're on dates with.
Yes, exactly. But I think also, you know, it's very, very good to reflect and think about, why is it that I am feeling jealous? Is it because I want something more from this relationship? And if that is the case, be honest about it and communicate that. But yeah, I think one can't expect a casual relationship to then also function as a full-time sort of serious relationship too. Yeah, just reflect a little bit and communicate with the partner.
Well, Mark, Slee, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being part of our panel discussion. Of course, our WhatsApp line does stay open. If you want to continue sharing your thoughts on a spring fling, you're welcome to send through those voice notes. Our number is 063 408 8863.